Hey everyone, before we dive into today's stories, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It'll really help you get more thrilling and spine-chilling stories like this. I'd love to know, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below, and let's see how far our story listeners reach. I woke to the sound again, not a creak, not the random pop of old wood cooling at night. Footsteps, slow, measured, right above my ceiling. My chest tightened until I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. The clock glowed 1:14 a.m. I lay perfectly still, trying to convince myself it was nothing. But the sound came again. 1, 2, 3 deliberate steps, then silence. It had started 3 nights ago. At first I blamed the pain meds, ankle surgery, still healing, parents vacationing in Spain while I stayed behind in the house I grew up in. But I know the difference between a dream and a sound that vibrates through plaster. I reached for my phone. My thumb hovered over Mom, then stopped. What could she do from another continent? And I'd sworn I was fine here alone. The attic ladder is in the hallway. To get there, I'd have to hobble with my crutches through the dark. Not happening. Instead, I slid from bed, careful not to thump my cast, and cracked the door. The hallway smelled faintly of dust and the lavender detergent Mom uses. Nothing moved, nothing breathed. Then, tap, a single pivot of a heel overhead. I locked the door and sat awake until dawn. Morning didn't erase it. Over toast, I replayed the sound, steady, human. I propped my crutches under the attic hatch and poked my head up. Empty. Cardboard boxes, Christmas lights, the old rocking chair, no footprints in the dust. I tried to laugh it off. Painkillers, house settling, squirrels. That night, at 1:07 a.m., the steps returned. I stopped taking the pain meds to prove I wasn't hallucinating. The footsteps still came. Sometimes they paced, sometimes they paused directly above my bed, like whoever it was wanted me to know they were there. I started sleeping in the living room, the TV murmuring all night. Still, faint creaks traveled the ceiling, following. By the 5th night, I was jumpy at every sound. I set a broom against the door like a trip alarm. I wedged chairs under windows. I kept the hallway light on. At 12:58 a.m., I heard the attic hatch creak, a tiny sound, wood on wood, then nothing. The next morning, I called my neighbor, Mrs. Dunn, who'd known me since I was a toddler. "Probably raccoons," she said through the speakerphone, voice brisk. "They love warm attics. I'll bring over a trap tomorrow." She never came. Later, I learned she'd left town to visit her sister, hadn't even spoken to me that day. I still don't know who answered that call. I began noticing other things. A cereal box moved half an inch from where I'd left it. My toothbrush damp when I hadn't used it. A faint scent of cigarette smoke, though I don't smoke. I told myself I was imagining it until the Thursday night storm. Rain hammered the roof like thrown gravel. Power flickered, then died. The house became a cave of shadows, only lightning for light. I lit a candle and tried to read. At 1:03 a.m., the footsteps started again, heavier now, matched to the thunder's rhythm. I grabbed my phone and dialed 000. I'm in Australia, old habits. No signal. Lightning flared, revealing the hallway. The attic hatch hung slightly open. Something dripped onto the carpet beneath it. I backed into the kitchen, gripping a carving knife. My cast throbbed. For a full minute, there was only the drum of rain. Then a whisper, not words, just a breath, drifted from the dark stairwell leading up to the attic. I wanted to run, but my leg wouldn't let me. I pressed myself into a corner and held the knife until my fingers ached. Another breath. Closer. The candle guttered out. When dawn finally grayed the windows, I forced myself into the hallway. The hatch was fully closed again. The carpet beneath was dry, but a faint muddy footprint, a boot print, stained the edge of the rug. I called the police. 2 officers searched every inch of the house. They found nothing but old insulation and spider webs. One of them, a young constable with tired eyes, shrugged. "Old houses make noise," he said. His partner glanced at my cast and added, "Maybe painkillers?" They left. I locked every door and cried until noon. That evening, I set up an old baby monitor I'd found in the closet, one piece in the attic, the other beside my bed. If anything moved, I'd hear it. At 12:41 a.m., the monitor crackled alive. Not footsteps, a low, steady breathing. Then a man's voice, a dry rasp. "You shouldn't have called them." I froze, the baby monitor hissing on my nightstand. "You shouldn't have called them." The voice was low and dry, like someone whispering through sandpaper. I grabbed my phone and jabbed 00 again, still no signal. The storm had passed hours ago. Service should have been back. My heart hammered against my ribs so hard I felt dizzy. The monitor crackled again. A slow inhale, a long exhale, then nothing. I wanted to believe it was interference, a neighbor's CB radio. But the voice, it said called them, like it knew I'd phoned the police. My hand trembled so badly I nearly dropped the phone. I slid off the bed, careful not to bump my cast, and crept to the hallway. The house held its breath. The attic hatch hung slightly open. I tightened my grip on the carving knife I'd kept beside the bed since the storm. The ladder creaked as I pulled it down, each sound echoing like a gunshot in the quiet. I knew it was reckless, but a strange calm settled over me. Fear had burned itself out, leaving something colder, resolve. I climbed, my cast dragging awkwardly on each rung. The attic air smelled of old dust and something metallic, like pennies left in the sun. I swept my flashlight across boxes, the broken rocking chair, the faded Christmas wreath. Nothing moved. Then the beam caught a corner I'd never noticed, a small crawl space hidden behind a stack of insulation boards. A square of plywood leaned against it, recently shifted, no dust. I swallowed hard and aimed the light. Inside the crawl space sat a backpack. Next to it, a crumpled sleeping bag, a half-empty bottle of water, an ashtray full of cigarette butts, and a notebook. I flicked the pages with the knife tip. Dates, times, notes in jagged handwriting. June 3rd, 1:17 a.m., she cried in her sleep. June 4th, police came. Stayed quiet. June 5th, moving closer tonight. My stomach dropped. The entries stretched back weeks, long before my parents left. A floorboard creaked behind me. I spun, flashlight cutting across the dark. A man crouched by the ladder. Early 40s maybe, beard patchy and dark, eyes like wet stone. He wore a brown jacket smeared with dust. For a heartbeat, neither of us moved. Then he smiled, small, deliberate. "You found my place," he said, voice exactly like the one from the monitor. I raised the knife with both hands. "Get out." He took one slow step toward me. "You shouldn't have called them. They never help." My mind screamed run, but the ladder was behind him. He lunged. I slashed with the knife. The blade grazed his sleeve. He hissed but kept coming. I swung the flashlight next, cracking it against his temple. He staggered, cursing. I dropped to the ladder and half slid, half fell, pain shooting through my ankle. I hit the hallway floor and scrambled backward. He followed, faster than I thought possible. I grabbed the broom I'd left as a trip alarm and jammed it upward. The bristles caught him under the chin and he toppled the last few rungs. We both hit the floor hard. My cast throbbed. I bit down a scream. He reached for me. I drove the knife down, catching his forearm. He howled, pulled back, then bolted through the living room toward the back door. I crawled to the phone, still no signal. The house fell silent, except for my ragged breathing. Front door locked, back door ajar. I slammed it shut and braced it with a chair. Outside, the night was a black well. I listened for footsteps, for anything. Nothing. I stayed awake till dawn, knife in hand, eyes on the door. At first light, I called the police again. This time the line rang. 2 officers arrived within 20 minutes. I showed them the attic, the crawl space, the notebook. But the sleeping bag was gone, so was the backpack. Only dust remained. The officers exchanged a look I didn't like. One finally said, "We'll file a report. Keep your doors locked. Maybe stay with friends for a few days." I wanted to scream. He was here. He attacked me. "We believe you," the younger one said gently, but his eyes slid past me to the empty crawl space. They left after taking a statement. I packed a bag and went to my friend Tessa's apartment that afternoon. For 2 nights I slept on her couch, jumping at every creak. I kept checking my phone for updates from the police. None came. On the 3rd morning, I returned home with Tessa beside me. The house was quiet, no sign of forced entry, but on the kitchen counter lay a single cigarette butt, fresh, the faint curl of smoke still rising. Tessa called the police while I stood frozen. They dusted for prints. Nothing. They checked the doors and windows, all locked from the inside. "Could be left over from before," one officer said. But I knew. He'd been back. Maybe never left. I moved in with Tessa permanently after that. My parents sold the house a month later. The new owners gutted the attic during renovation. They found a narrow shaft behind the chimney, a dark vertical tunnel that led down inside the walls, all the way to a crawl space behind the kitchen cabinets, a perfect hiding place. Even now, years later, I wake at 1:14 a.m. sometimes. Sure, I hear those slow, deliberate steps above me. I hold my breath and listen, and in the silence, I swear I can hear someone exhale. I woke to the sound of the lock trying and failing to open. Not a knock, not the hum of pipes, the sharp electronic beep of my smart deadbolt rejecting a code. 3 beeps. Pause. 3 seconds of silence. Then again, like someone outside was frantically guessing. My phone screen lit. Wonder 12 a.m. I held my breath. Maybe a glitch. But the next set of beeps followed a pattern. One I knew, my old phone number. Who would even remember that? And why try it as a door code? I slid out of bed and crept barefoot to the hallway. Every floorboard a gunshot under my feet. The apartment smelled of last night's coffee and rain from the open window. Beyond the door, someone shifted their weight. The hinges gave a soft metallic groan. Another attempt. Beep, beep, beep. Pause. Beep. The sound was steady, almost patient, like they knew I was listening. Earlier that week, I'd bragged to my friend Danny that the new keypad lock made me unbreak-enable. I'd even joked about never needing keys again. Now, I pressed my ear to the door. The night outside was wet and muffled. The hallway light burned out days ago. I could almost picture a shadow crouched at the keypad. My pulse thudded in my throat. What if they actually get it right? I backed toward the kitchen, grabbed the heaviest thing in reach, my cast iron skillet, and checked the window. 3 floors up, no fire escape, no easy out. The beeps stopped. Silence swelled until it roared in my ears. Then a single knock, gentle, deliberate. Who is it? My voice cracked. Nothing. Another knock. 3 beats, perfectly even. When the doorbell finally rang, the chime sounded cheerful and insane. I flicked the hall light on. Through the peephole, only darkness. Someone had covered it. I swallowed a scream. That's when my phone buzzed. Door lock alert, 9 failed attempts. Beneath it, a message from an unknown number. Let me in. We used to share everything. My stomach dropped. The wording, personal, almost intimate. Who could it be? An ex? A neighbor with a grudge? I hadn't dated anyone serious in years. Another text arrived. Remember your old number? I do. I called building security. The call rang forever, no answer. The only person on duty tonight was Gary, the sleepy guard who usually dozed in the lobby. I texted Danny, someone's at my door. Call me now. 3 dots appeared, then nothing. No call. The phone vibrated again with a system notice. Manual override activated. My heart seized. That meant someone was trying the physical key slot. But my key was on my nightstand. No one else should have one. I pressed my back to the wall and tightened my grip on the skillet. Another message. We don't need keys. You taught me that. Taught who? My brain scrambled through possibilities. Only one person ever knew my old phone number and had seen me install the lock. Evan, my ex-roommate. We'd parted badly a year ago after he borrowed rent money and disappeared. Could it be him? But how would he know I was home tonight? A final buzz. Lights out now. And the hallway light I'd switched on went dark. I pressed my back against the wall, skillet in hand, every nerve screaming. The hallway was dark. The shadows seemed to stretch, crawling toward me. The lights flickered once, then cut entirely, leaving me in near complete darkness. I couldn't see anything, but I could feel it, the presence. My chest tightened, my breathing shallow. Whoever was outside didn't need a key, that much was clear. They knew me, my habits, my routines. Someone who had once been inside my life had found their way back in. I crept to the kitchen, trying to map the apartment in my head. Every corner, every closet, every doorway became a potential threat. I thought about the front door. Locked, yes, but no longer reliable. Every time the lock had tried to engage, I realized they were testing me, pushing my boundaries, learning my rhythm. I needed a plan. Staying put wasn't safe. Running wasn't either. My phone vibrated again. A new message appeared. I've been waiting for you to notice me. A chill ran down my spine. Waiting? He had been inside, watching, waiting. I imagined him lurking in shadows, silent and patient, tracking every small move I made for weeks. I considered calling the police again, but the first attempt hadn't gone through. Maybe he was blocking the lines. Maybe he was closer than I thought. I had to move. Slowly I slid toward the bedroom, dragging my ankle carefully behind me. The skillet was heavy in my hands, but it gave me a sense of control. If he came at me, I would not go quietly. The bedroom door was ajar. I nudged it with my foot and peered in. Nothing. Nothing but the familiar chaos of my life. Clothes scattered, books stacked haphazardly, the bed unmade. Then I noticed something new. The laptop on my desk, open, cursor blinking in an empty document. It wasn't mine. I never leave it open. Someone had been here. Someone had been watching my screen. My stomach churned. He wasn't just outside. He had been inside. I backed out carefully and went toward the back door. The chain lock was secure. I leaned down and pressed my ear against the door, straining for any hint of movement. Silence. Too much silence. Then a tap at the window. Not loud, not forceful, just a faint, deliberate touch. I froze. I wasn't imagining it. I could see a shadow flicker behind the thin curtain. Without thinking, I bolted toward the living room, dragging my cast-iron skillet. The back door swung slightly in the breeze. I realized he had found a way inside. I ran toward the bedroom again, grabbed my phone, and tried to call Danny. Finally, she picked up. "Danny, someone's in my apartment. I think it's Evan. He's trying the lock. He's inside." "Calm down, breathe," she said, her voice urgent. "Are you in the bedroom? Lock the door. Call 00, I'm on my way." I did as she said. I locked the door, slid the chair under the handle, and sank against the wall, listening. And then I heard it. Slow footsteps in the hallway. Not frantic, not running. Deliberate. I pressed my back flat against the wall, heart hammering. He was moving methodically, searching. Maybe for me, maybe for something else. The doorknob rattled. My stomach flipped. I gripped the skillet like a lifeline. "I just want to talk," a low voice whispered, perfectly familiar. I froze. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but my ankle wouldn't allow it. I couldn't see him, couldn't get past him. "Remember when we used to share everything?" The words hit like a punch. Memories of our past, our arguments, his obsession, everything I had tried to leave behind, it all rushed back. I knew I had to act fast. If he got any closer, I wouldn't be able to stop him. I needed a way out. I remembered the fire escape outside the window in the kitchen. Risky, but safer than facing him head-on. Slowly, carefully, I crept toward the kitchen. Every creak of the floor felt amplified. Then the bedroom door swung open. I froze mid-step. He was standing there, his eyes calm, almost cold. "Don't run," he said. "It's easier if you don't fight." I swallowed my fear, then acted. I darted toward the kitchen window. He lunged. I barely managed to open the latch. My body slammed through the opening, scraping along the frame. I fell onto the fire escape, ankle throbbing, heart racing. I looked back. He was at the window, staring, but didn't follow. I climbed down as fast as I could, adrenaline carrying me the last few feet to the ground. I ran, barefoot, bleeding, not daring to look back. By the time the police arrived, he was gone. They searched, but there was no trace. No fingerprints, no footprints, nothing except the chaos he had left behind. I never saw him again, but I never forgot. Sometimes in the middle of the night, I check my locks, every code, every number, every hidden key, and I wonder, what else did he know? How long had he been watching? Even now, years later, when I hear a quiet knock or a lock clicks in a dream, I feel my chest tighten. I remember the patience, the knowledge, the closeness of a danger that knew me better than I knew myself. And I remember that someone can be inside your home, even when you think you're completely alone. The first knock came just as I was pouring my second cup of coffee. At first, I thought it was the mailman, though it was too early for deliveries. I set the mug down, wiped my hands on a towel, and peered through the peephole. No one. The building lobby was empty, but a small envelope had been slipped under my door. I crouched and picked it up. Printed neatly on the front was my apartment number, my name typed clearly. Maintenance check, tonight, 11:45 p.m. No stamp, no return address. I frowned, shaking it in my hands. Maintenance never slips notes under doors. They always post notices in the lobby, at least a week in advance. Curiosity mixed with a creeping unease. I opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper. "We need to perform a short check of your plumbing system tonight. Please remain inside your apartment. Technician will arrive promptly. No need to leave. Estimated duration, 15 minutes. The language was polite, almost formal. Too formal. I checked my phone. My building's maintenance app had no scheduled visits. The front desk confirmed no one had authorized anything. I shrugged. Maybe it was a prank? An overly clever neighbor? By 11:30, my unease had grown into a knot of tension in my stomach. The lights in the hallway flickered. A faint buzz, like an elevator moving slowly, echoed from somewhere. I sat on my couch, half listening to a podcast, half listening for anything. At 11:45 exactly, someone pressed my apartment buzzer. "Maintenance, checking your plumbing," a calm male voice said. I hesitated. "I didn't request anything," I said, my voice higher than I wanted. "It's routine," the voice replied. "We just want to make sure everything is running smoothly. I'll only be a few minutes. Please open the door." I glanced at the peephole. A man stood there, mid-30s, uniformed in a beige polo with a company logo I didn't recognize. He held a clipboard. His smile was friendly, professional. It made the hairs on my neck stand on end. "Can I see your ID?" I asked. He hesitated, a fraction too long, then reached into his pocket and produced a laminated card, angled so I could see only the front. It looked official. "I promise, ma'am, just a quick check. It won't take long." I should have refused. Something inside me screamed to close the door, but my curiosity, mixed with a growing dread of confrontation in the hallway, made me step aside. Once inside, he moved confidently, as though he had been in my apartment many times before. He carried a toolkit, though I noticed the tools were minimal, nothing like the heavy, specialized equipment maintenance usually uses. "I'll just check the bathroom first," he said. I followed, keeping my distance. He crouched, lifted the cabinet doors beneath the sink, and ran a hand over the pipes. I watched him closely. His movements were precise, practiced, too fluid. I realized I didn't recognize him. None of the maintenance staff ever carried themselves like this, always a bit clumsy, always apologetic for the mess. "Everything looks fine," he said, rising. "Just needed to inspect a small connection. Nothing to worry about." I nodded, my throat tight. Then he asked casually, "Do you live alone?" The question stopped me cold. "Yes," I said, forcing calm. "Why?" "Just checking. Some procedures require resident supervision. Safety first." He smiled again. That smile didn't reach his eyes. After he left, I locked the door immediately. My hands were shaking so badly I spilled my coffee. I tried calling the building front desk. No answer. I checked my phone. No calls, no notifications. The building app still listed no maintenance for my apartment. I told myself I had imagined the ID, the timing, the strange politeness, but a small voice in the back of my mind whispered, he knew I lived alone. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak in the pipes, every faint thump of the building settling sounded like footsteps. At 2:17 a.m., my phone buzzed. Unknown number. "See you tomorrow, same time." I froze. He was coming back? My hands shook. I thought about calling the police. But how could I explain a man who looked official and left without touching anything dangerous? It sounded insane. I barely slept, imagining him standing in my hallway, clipboard in hand, just watching. The next evening, I barricaded my door with a chair and wedged a broom under the handle. I set up my laptop camera to live stream the hallway. My plan was simple, catch him in the act. At 11:45, the buzzer sounded. My stomach sank. "Maintenance," the voice said. Calm, friendly. I peered at the camera feed. A man stood in the hallway, beige uniform, clipboard, posture too confident for someone who didn't belong. He reached for the doorknob. I held my breath. Then a new chill ran down my spine. The man didn't hesitate. He didn't knock. He opened the door himself. The locks hadn't been forced. He was inside, as if he had a master key. I froze as the door swung open. The man stepped inside as if he belonged, clipboard in hand, eyes scanning the apartment like he had keys to every corner of my life. My heart slammed against my ribs, adrenaline spiking. "Just a routine check," he said casually, almost too casually. His smile didn't reach his eyes. I backed toward the kitchen, gripping a heavy pepper grinder as a weapon. My phone lay on the counter, screen cracked from my earlier panic. I fumbled for it, dialing 00 with one shaky hand. No answer. I realized with a sinking feeling that the line must have been tampered with. My apartment felt suddenly like a trap. Every sound, the creak of the floorboards, the hum of the fridge, felt amplified, threatening. He moved toward the bathroom, slow and deliberate. "I need to check the water pressure," he said. "It'll only take a few minutes." I wanted to run. My ankle, still weak from an old sprain, threatened to give way with every step. But I knew if I made a sudden move, he'd notice. "I'll stay here," I managed to say, voice trembling. He nodded, as if this were expected. I watched him closely, trying to memorize every detail. The way he tilted his head, the way his fingers lingered on the faucet handles, the faint smudge of something dark on his sleeve. He was calm, too calm, confident. I needed an escape. The fire escape outside the kitchen window was my only option, but it required climbing and risk being spotted. I waited, holding my breath, listening to the quiet hum of the apartment. Then, footsteps behind me. I spun. He had moved faster than I realized. He stood near the bedroom door, eyes cold, studying me. "Do you live alone?" he asked, the same question as last night, but now it sounded threatening. I nodded. "Good," he said softly. "It's safer this way." Panic flared. I had to act. Slowly, I edged toward the kitchen, dragging my ankle, trying to keep calm. My mind raced. Call for help, run, hide, anything. The man followed, silent, measured. He didn't speak. He didn't hurry. He just moved like a predator, knowing I couldn't escape quickly. I reached the window. My hands trembled as I lifted the latch. Outside, the fire escape waited like a lifeline. But my ankle hurt too much to jump. He stepped closer. "It's unnecessary to make this difficult," he said. I froze, weighing my options. Then desperation won. I kicked a chair toward him, forcing him to step back. I slipped through the window, scraping my arm along the frame, and landed on the fire escape. Pain shot through my ankle, but I ignored it. I had to get out. I ran, bare feet on metal, descending as fast as I could. Behind me, I heard the faint shuffle of movement inside the apartment. He hadn't followed, but he was still there, waiting, watching. I didn't stop until I reached the street. The night was empty, eerily quiet. I ran to a nearby convenience store and collapsed against the counter, trying to catch my breath. The clerk looked at me, confused, as I tried to explain. My words tumbled over themselves. Someone, an imposter, maintenance, my apartment. The man didn't follow me outside. He hadn't needed to. His message, his presence, had been enough to terrify me into helplessness. I called the police again. This time, they came quickly. Together, we returned to the apartment. Inside, everything appeared normal. No signs of forced entry, no mess. But the feeling of violation lingered, thick in the air. The officers searched, but found nothing. No fingerprints, no traces, nothing to identify the man. I never saw him again. The building management insisted all maintenance staff are trained, monitored, and always schedule visits weeks in advance. No one had authorization to enter my apartment. I changed locks. I installed extra security cameras. I slept with the lights on. Even now, years later, when I hear a knock at the door or someone claims to be from maintenance, I freeze. I remember the calm precision of that imposter, the way he moved as if he had lived in my apartment for months. And I remember the fear that no one was safe inside their own home, not when someone could look so ordinary, carry a clipboard, and know exactly how to step inside your life without you even noticing. The first hint was the smell. I had just settled onto the couch with a mug of tea, scrolling through my phone, when a faint scent of smoke drifted under the living room door. At first, I ignored it. Maybe the neighbor was burning something outside, or the rain had carried in a faint smell from the chimney. But it was different, sharper, almost metallic, like something electrical burning. I set my mug down and crept to the door. Nothing on the carpet, no heat, no sparks, just the smell. I opened the door a crack. A thin curl of smoke rose along the edge of the floorboards. It moved as if carried by a deliberate, careful hand. My stomach dropped. Electricity, something shorted, maybe the heater. I glanced at the thermostat. It was off. The outlets didn't smell burnt. Nothing seemed wrong. Yet the smoke persisted, curling and twisting like it was alive. A shadow flickered inside it. I froze. There's no one there, I told myself. You're imagining it. But instinct whispered otherwise. The shape moved subtly, just enough to make my stomach tighten. A hand, an arm. It vanished before I could focus. I checked the windows, locked. The back door, locked. I wasn't expecting anyone tonight. Friends canceled, family out of town. I was completely alone. Yet someone had been inside my home. I backed toward the kitchen, thinking of calling their Oro. My hands shook as I fumbled for my phone. Signal was weak. Just barely enough to send a text to my friend Riley. Something's in my apartment. Smoke, shadows. I don't know what to do. No response. The little dots blinked endlessly. I turned back to the living room. The smoke had shifted. Thin, curling lines now traced along the floorboards toward the hallway. The The shadow had moved too, closer to the doorway that led to my bedroom. My breath caught. A sense of being watched grew, almost tactile, like the smoke carried eyes. I gripped a kitchen knife, the cold metal reassuring against my palm. I could feel my pulse hammering. I whispered to myself, "You're fine. Just check the smoke, see what's wrong, then call Riley." Step by step, I followed the curl of the smoke toward the hallway. And then I saw it. A scrap of paper taped to the wall, partially hidden behind the coat rack. It said nothing, just a single word written in uneven, almost childish scrawl. Found. My heart leapt into my throat. Who had left it? How long had they been here? The apartment had seemed empty when I came home. I had locked the door. I had checked the windows. Questions piled on questions. I turned back to the living room. The smoke was thicker now, no longer rising naturally. It seemed to move with purpose, pooling in the corners like a stage set. And the shadow? It was clearer this time. The shape of a person crouching, watching, waiting. I ran to the bedroom and locked the door, pressing my back against it. My phone buzzed. Riley finally replied, "Call me." I dialed frantically. "Riley, someone is here. Smoke, shadows, papers, something's in my apartment." Her voice was sharp and panicked, exactly what I needed. "Stay put. Don't open the door. I'm calling the police." I pressed my ear to the door. Footsteps, slow, careful, deliberate. Not running, not panicked, but moving, circling. I held my breath, knife in hand. My thoughts spun. Could he or she still be in the living room? Were they moving toward the bedroom? Had they been here the whole time I was upstairs? I didn't hear any break-in sounds. No windows shattered, no doors forced, which meant they had a way in. A way I hadn't seen. The smoke began to curl under the door again. This time it was thicker, almost suffocating. I gagged, coughing, holding the knife tighter. A whisper followed, so faint I barely caught it. "Don't move." The hair on the back of my neck stood on end. I pressed myself flat against the door, trying to make myself smaller, quieter, invisible. The shadow outside shifted, moving just slightly with the smoke. And then I realized it wasn't just observing. It was leaving a pattern. Lines in the smoke, signs, clues. Someone was playing with me, testing me, waiting to see how I would react. I remembered the fire escape window in the kitchen, the quickest way out. But getting there meant moving through the living room, the exact place the smoke and shadow had been. I had to wait. I had to plan. Every second could be watched, every movement anticipated. And then, just as I thought I might survive the night crouched against my bedroom door, a soft tap sounded from inside the living room. The tap echoed again, soft and deliberate, coming from somewhere deep in the living room. My heart hammered in my chest as I crouched behind the bedroom door, knife clutched in white-knuckled hands. I could barely breathe. The smoke curled under the door again, thicker now, and with it came the faintest outline of movement, a shadow, shifting as if tracing my every thought. I whispered Riley's name, but only my own echo answered me. Minutes dragged into eternity. I tried to calm myself, tried to think rationally. What do I know? What do I control? Not much. The intruder had already broken into my home, left cryptic messages, manipulated the smoke, and now seemed to be toying with me. Then my phone buzzed. Riley again. "Alex, get out now. Call 000 while you run. Don't hesitate." I swallowed hard. The fire escape in the kitchen, the window I had scouted earlier, was my only real chance. But reaching it meant moving through the living room, the epicenter of the smoke and shadow. I took a deep breath, willing my shaking legs to cooperate, and edged toward the bedroom door. Every step made my ankle ache. Every creak of the floorboard made me feel like the shadow could reach through the smoke and grab me. I peeked out. The living room looked normal, almost. But the smoke pooled in unnatural lines across the floor, and the shadow had shifted closer to the center. I made a snap decision. I sprinted across the hallway, careful not to knock anything over, praying the figure wouldn't react fast enough. My ankle screamed, but adrenaline pushed me onward. At the kitchen, I yanked the fire escape window open. Cold night air rushed in, carrying the smell of wet asphalt and rain. Relief flooded me for a split second, then I froze. The shadow appeared at the edge of the smoke, not rushing, just watching, just standing there. Almost smiling, though I couldn't see it clearly. "Don't think you can leave." A whisper slid from the smoke like ice through my veins. I didn't respond. I didn't wait. I climbed through the window, scraping my arm and wrist along the frame. Pain and fear mixed, making my movements clumsy, but I landed on the fire escape. I didn't stop running. Down the metal stairs, onto the wet street, my ankle burning with every step. I could hear nothing behind me, but the memory of the shadow kept me moving. I reached the corner store, shivering and soaked, and finally called 00. The police arrived within minutes. They followed me back to the building. Inside, everything appeared normal. No signs of forced entry, no broken locks, no items missing. But the living room smelled faintly of smoke and traces of something dark and fine. The same substance that had created the smoky patterns remained along the baseboards. I tried to explain what happened. The officers looked at me with polite disbelief. They dusted for fingerprints, searched the apartment, and found nothing. "No forced entry," one of them said. "Anything else you can tell us?" It's like someone was playing with me," I said, my voice shaking, watching me, leaving messages, manipulating the smoke. They exchanged glances. I could see their doubt. I moved out of that apartment a week later. Riley helped me pack. I couldn't stay, couldn't risk it. Even now, years later, when I smell faint smoke or see curling shadows in the corner of my vision, I freeze. I remember the way the intruder moved, precise and patient, like they knew my routines, my fears. I remember the scrap of paper that said, "Found." And I remember the thought that still haunts me every night. Someone could be inside your home, watching you, shaping the world around you into their own game, and you'd never know until it was too late. It started late at night. I was sitting on the couch, drinking coffee, when I noticed movement above me. At first, I thought it was normal. The building was old and floors creaked, but it wasn't random. The sounds above seemed to follow me. When I walked across the room, there was a shift above. When I stopped, it stopped. I froze. My apartment was supposed to be empty. I was alone. I pressed my back against the wall, trying to convince myself it was just my imagination. But then I noticed something subtle, a soft drag of something heavy, a quiet shuffle, the faint shift of furniture. Each motion felt deliberate, like someone was testing me. I whispered, "Hello." No reply. Only silence, except for the presence above me, watching, waiting. I moved to the window to see the street below. Rain slicked the pavement. The street was empty. No one had entered the building. I thought about apartment 12B right above mine. It had been empty for months. Renovations, the landlord said. And yet the noises continued. Someone was in that apartment, or someone had been living there without anyone noticing. I tried to distract myself. I turned on the TV, read a book, even tried lying down. But every time I moved, the activity above seemed to respond. Furniture shifted just enough to make me uneasy. The quiet presence was learning me, anticipating me. Then my phone buzzed, unknown number. "I see you." I dropped it. My stomach tightened. This wasn't just observation anymore. Someone had been watching me for a long time, studying how I moved, and now they were sending messages. Sleep was impossible. Every small noise, the heater humming, water dripping from the faucet, felt like part of the intruder's game. Shadows from my lamp twisted strangely on the ceiling, and I felt eyes on me even when I wasn't looking. I thought about the fire escape window in the kitchen. My only way out without passing directly under the ceiling. But it was risky. Rain made the metal slick, and whoever had been above me could still be watching, waiting for a mistake. I spent the night crouched in the living room, knife in hand, planning. The person above had patience, precision, and now they were ready for the next move. Just before dawn, something slid under my bedroom door. A piece of paper. I picked it up carefully. Written in uneven letters, "You can't hide." Fear froze me. This wasn't a stranger sneaking around. This was someone orchestrating my fear. Someone who knew me, my habits, my every movement, and I had no idea what they wanted next. I stayed pressed against my bedroom door, clutching the knife. My hands were shaking so badly it hurt to hold it. Every small sound above me, the moving furniture, the faint drag of something heavy, made my stomach tighten. I knew I couldn't stay here forever. The fire escape window in the kitchen was my only real chance. But getting there meant crossing the living room, directly under the apartment above. I waited until just a sliver of daylight appeared. The noises had stopped. The silence was worse than the sounds. It felt deliberate, like the intruder was waiting for the perfect moment. I edged toward the kitchen, moving as slowly as I could. Every instinct screamed at me to stop. My eyes were fixed on the ceiling. Not a sound, not a flicker, but I felt it, the presence above me, patient and watching. I opened the window. Cold, wet air rushed in, making my clothes stick to me. Relief flickered for a moment. Maybe I was going to get out. Then I felt it. I knew without looking that the intruder above had noticed me. I climbed onto the sill, scraping my arm, then started down the fire escape ladder. Rain slicked the metal. My ankle burned, but I ignored it, forcing myself to focus. Halfway down, I thought I felt a shift in the apartment above me. Not a sound, just a presence. It was enough to make my blood run cold. Whoever had been living above me knew I was escaping. I didn't look back. I didn't stop. I reached the ground and ran, soaked and exhausted, slipping in puddles but refusing to fall. The street was empty. I didn't stop until I reached a convenience store nearby. I collapsed inside, breathing hard, shivering, and tried to explain to the clerk. The police came quickly. We returned to my apartment. Everything looked normal. No signs of forced entry, no broken locks, nothing missing. But I could still smell that faint, sharp odor, the same one that had filled the apartment the night before. "All looks secure," one officer said. "Are you sure someone's been here?" I nodded. "I know it sounds crazy, but someone has been living above me, watching me, following my movements, sending messages." They searched. They checked the apartment above. Empty. Nothing to find. I moved out a week later. I couldn't stay. Every small noise, every shadow, every flicker of movement reminded me that someone had been inside my home, someone who knew me too well. Even now, years later, if I hear a soft shift above me or a faint scrape somewhere in a ceiling, my body tenses. Someone had taken control of my apartment without breaking a single lock. They had been patient, careful, and terrifyingly precise. And I keep asking myself, did they ever stop watching, or did I just leave the stage and they're still waiting for the next scene? The instant I stepped inside my house, I felt it. A wrongness in the air, subtle but sharp, like the echo after someone has just left a room. I closed the door and turned the deadbolt. It resisted for a fraction of a second, as though it had already been turned once today. I was sure I'd locked it when I left that morning. The tiny hesitation set my teeth on edge. The living room looked normal until my eyes landed on the dining chair. It was pulled out at a slight angle, barely noticeable, but I'm the sort of person who lines things up without thinking. I stood there, listening. The house gave nothing back but silence thick enough to make me aware of my own heartbeat. I told myself not to overreact. Maybe I'd nudged the chair last night. Maybe the lock had been stiff. Ordinary explanations are comforting lies, but I clung to them anyway. In the kitchen, I opened the refrigerator for water. The half-full bottle I'd left that morning was empty and standing perfectly upright. That was harder to explain. I had just started to convince myself I'd misremembered when my phone buzzed. The email had no name, just a jumble of letters for an address. Subject line, Lot 19. Inside was a single sentence, "Welcome to the auction. Bidding has begun." Beneath it was a link. I should have deleted it. Curiosity 1. The page was plain black with a countdown clock, 3 minutes and change, and a live video feed. It was my living room. My breath caught. The camera angle was high in a corner near the ceiling, a place with no camera of mine. I scanned the room in a slow circle. No lens, no blinking light. Yet there I was on the screen, phone in hand, staring upward like a cornered animal. A small chat window scrolled beside the video. Nice posture. Turn around. 2000. My fingers went numb. Turn around? I turned anyway. Nothing but the locked door behind me. The countdown ticked lower. What were they bidding on? I closed the page and yanked the Wi-Fi router's cord from the wall. I shut off mobile data. When I checked again, the feed was still live. Somehow it didn't need my connection. A faint vibration came through the floor. Maybe footsteps, maybe the house settling. Every sound suddenly carried a question. I grabbed a flashlight and checked each room. Bedroom, bathroom, hall closet. Empty. A soft metallic click came from the attic. I froze in the hallway, light trained on the hatch. I hadn't opened the attic in months. Another email arrived. Don't keep them waiting. Attached was a photo of me standing exactly where I stood, taken from behind. I spun around. Nothing. Panic crawled up my spine. Whoever was doing this wasn't just online. They were inside or close enough to watch me through the walls. I tried to call 911. No signal. Not weak. Gone. The bars on my phone were empty, as if the network had been erased. I rushed to the front door. The deadbolt turned, but the door wouldn't open, as if it had been glued to the frame. I checked the back door, the windows. Every exit was sealed. The attic hatch creaked again. Dust sifted down in a slow spiral. I stepped back and raised the flashlight. Something white drifted from the dark above and landed at my feet. It was a card, stiff and clean. 3 words were written in careful black marker: Lot 19, final round. My hand trembled as I picked it up. Another email arrived almost immediately. Reserve met. Delivery in 15 minutes. Delivery of what? Of me? I tried to force a plan through the fog of fear. Hidden cameras, someone in the attic, a network I couldn't shut down. Whoever they were, they knew everything. My layout, my habits, my helplessness. Then the house went dark. The power didn't blink. It died. No hum of the fridge, no whisper of heat through the vents. Only the glow of my phone remained, and the silent pressure of time running out. The dark felt alive, as if the walls themselves were breathing. I tightened my grip on the flashlight, but the beam was weak, the batteries fading faster than they should. Every shadow seemed to lean closer. A soft vibration reached me through the floorboards, a steady thrum, faint but unmistakable. It wasn't the fridge or the heater, it was too deliberate. I angled the flashlight toward the hallway, half expecting to see someone standing there. Nothing. Another email arrived. 10 minutes. My pulse jumped. 10 minutes until what? A person? A group? I pictured a van idling outside, headlights off, waiting for a signal. I thought of the card that had fallen from the attic. If someone was up there, I needed proof before I called the neighbors or the police. I dragged a chair under the hatch, climbed up, and pushed it open. The stale air smelled of insulation and old wood. I shone the light into the dark. Shapes of boxes and old furniture appeared, still and lifeless. Then I saw the glint of glass. A tiny camera sat on a beam, the lens pointed directly at the hatch. A thin black cable snaked along the wood, disappearing into the rafters. My chest tightened. Whoever set this up had been inside recently. They'd needed a ladder, time, and absolute access. I snapped the camera's cord with a sharp tug. The light on its base flickered out. For a moment I felt a small surge of victory. Then my phone vibrated again. Nice try. The message arrived the instant I severed the cord. I scrambled down, heart hammering. If they'd known the second I pulled the plug, they were watching through more than one camera. I turned off the flashlight and pressed my back to the wall, trying to breathe quietly. From somewhere deeper in the house came a faint metallic squeal, like a door hinge moving very slowly. I edged toward the sound, keeping to the wall. The squeal stopped. Silence settled again, thicker than before. My phone lit up. 5 minutes. Window delivery. Window. Which window? I spun through the living room, scanning the curtains. The house was too quiet. No wind, no hum of appliances, just the ragged rhythm of my breath. I forced myself to think. Whoever they were, they wanted me frozen, guessing. If they planned to come through a window, maybe I could use that. I grabbed the heaviest thing within reach, a cast iron skillet, and crouched in the shadows by the largest window, the one facing the backyard. 2 minutes passed. Nothing. Then a soft crack came from the opposite side of the house. They'd played me. I sprinted toward the front window and nearly tripped over something lying across the carpet. Another card. My name was written in black marker, letters perfectly even. The email tone chimed again. Open the door and it ends clean. I backed away, skillet raised. The front door handle turned slowly, once, twice, then stopped. Whoever was out there wasn't forcing it. They were waiting for me to obey. My heart pounded. The door rattled again, gentle, almost polite. I darted to the kitchen, grabbed my phone, and ducked behind the counter. Still no signal. I considered smashing a window and screaming for help, but the thought of a stranger waiting just outside froze me. Another email arrived. 1 minute. Last chance. I clenched the skillet so tightly my knuckles burned. If they came in, I'd swing first and think later. The final seconds dragged. The house stayed silent. Then came a sound that chilled me, a slow, deliberate clap. 3 sharp claps, spaced evenly, echoing through the dark. They came from everywhere and nowhere, hallway, ceiling, vents. I pressed a hand over my mouth. My own heartbeat felt deafening. A new email, Lot 19 sold, transaction complete, and then nothing. No footsteps, no voices, just the low hum of power returning as every light blinked back to life at once. I crept to the window. The yard lay empty under the streetlight. No car, no figure, just stillness. The front door stood ajar. I was certain I'd locked it when I first came in, and I'd heard the bolt resist when I tried to leave. Now it was wide open. I stepped forward, skillet still raised. A single envelope rested on the welcome mat outside. No one in sight. I bent, snatched it, and backed inside, locking the door behind me. Inside the envelope was a plain sheet of paper with 5 words. "You kept them entertained. Thanks." I stared at the note until the letters blurred. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't sleep the next. Police later found tiny wireless cameras hidden in vents, smoke detectors, even a hollowed-out light switch. None had fingerprints. The email trail led nowhere. Whoever ran that auction knew exactly how to vanish. Weeks have passed. The cameras are gone, the locks replaced, the Wi-Fi disconnected, but I still wake at every creak of the house, wondering if another countdown has already begun. Because whoever bought Lot 19 might still be out there, waiting to collect. I was brushing my teeth when my phone buzzed on the counter. New device detected, smart mirror. I don't own a smart mirror. For a second I thought it was a random Bluetooth glitch. I swiped the notification away, but my stomach tightened. The bathroom mirror stared back at me, ordinary as ever, a rectangle of glass framed in cheap wood. No wires, no electronics, nothing smart about it. I finished brushing and leaned in to rinse. That's when I noticed it, the tiniest delay in the reflection. My arm moved, but the mirrored version of me seemed to trail a fraction of a second behind. Maybe I was imagining it. I waved again. This time it matched perfectly. I shook my head, laughed under my breath, and left the bathroom. The house was quiet, except for the low hum of the fridge. I'd been looking forward to this weekend alone. Roommate out of town, no plans, just me and a stack of books. But as I settled on the couch with a novel, another notification buzzed. Mirror active. No app name. No sender. Just those 2 words. I opened the phone's device list. Alongside my TV and speakers sat a new entry. Mirror 1A. I tapped for details. Location, unknown. Connected, now. A chill ran down my arms. I turned toward the hallway that led to the bathroom. From here, the door was barely visible, cracked open just an inch. Darkness pooled behind it. I told myself it had to be a neighbor's gadget bleeding into my network. But I'd secured the Wi-Fi with a long random password. No one should be able to connect. To be sure, I turned off the router completely. The house went silent as the little lights on the modem blinked out. Another buzz. Mirror active. I dropped the phone onto the couch cushions like it was hot. The message shouldn't have been possible with the router off. I stood, listening. The old wooden floor creaked softly under my weight. Every sound felt amplified, the tick of the wall clock, the faint hiss of air through the vents. Slowly I walked toward the bathroom. The door was still open a crack. I pushed it wider and flicked on the light. Brightness spilled over white tiles and the plain glass mirror above the sink. Nothing unusual, no blinking LEDs, no wires trailing behind. Just my reflection staring back, eyes too wide. I leaned closer, almost daring the glass to betray me. The surface was cool under my fingertips. My face looked pale but normal. Then a faint tone echoed from the phone I'd left on the couch, a single low chime. I stepped back into the hallway, heart thudding. From here I could see the screen glowing. Another notification banner slid across, mirror recording. I snatched the phone and double-checked the network settings. Wi-Fi off, cellular data off, yet the message pulsed on the lock screen as if the mirror itself were sending it. I forced myself to breathe and think. Hidden camera. Had to be. Maybe someone had mounted a tiny lens behind the glass before we moved in. I grabbed a screwdriver and returned to the bathroom, pried at the frame. The wood groaned but held tight as though sealed. Behind me the hallway light flickered, once, then steadied. I froze. Another buzz. Stand still. The words glowed white against black. No sender, no app. I turned in a slow circle, every nerve screaming. The mirror reflected the room perfectly, until I noticed something that made my chest tighten. In the reflection, the bathroom door behind me was wide open. In reality, it was only half open. I spun around. The door hadn't moved. When I looked back at the glass, the reflection caught up, closing to match. I backed away, screwdriver clenched tight. I forced myself to breathe slowly, though my heart was hammering hard enough to shake the screwdriver in my hand. The reflection's brief delay replayed in my mind like a warning I couldn't decode. I stepped backward into the hall and pulled the bathroom door shut. The latch clicked. My phone buzzed again. Do not close the door. The message appeared without an app header or phone number. I opened it anyway. We can see you better when it's open. My throat went dry. Someone was watching, and close enough to know what I was doing in real time. I bolted to the living room and grabbed my router from the wall. Still unplugged. I checked the locks. Front door dead-bolted, back door latched, windows shut. Nothing looked disturbed. Another notification slid across the screen. Mirror active, camera 2 online. Camera 2? I turned slowly, scanning the living room. No mirror here, no obvious lens. But the idea of a second camera sent me moving room to room, bedroom, closet, kitchen, searching for anything reflective. Nothing. A low tap came from the bathroom. I crept back down the hall and pressed my ear to the door. Silence. Then the faintest scrape of metal on tile, as if something sharp had dragged across the floor. I eased the door open. The bathroom light was off. I hadn't switched it off. The mirror caught the hallway light and threw a pale rectangle onto the sink. My reflection waited inside the glass, dim and ghost thin. I reached for the switch. Before I touched it, the mirror surface rippled, just a shimmer like heat above asphalt, then went still. I jerked my hand back. My phone buzzed again. Look closer. Every instinct told me to run, but some stubborn part of me leaned forward. I brought the flashlight on my phone to the surface and aimed the beam along the edge of the frame. That's when I saw it. A hair-thin slit between the mirror and the wall. Not a normal gap. This one pulsed faintly, like a seam in a machine. I pried at it with the screwdriver. The frame gave a reluctant creak and shifted. Cold air drifted out. Behind the glass wasn't drywall, it was a cavity. A small black lens stared back at me from a nest of wires. I swore under my breath and yanked harder. The mirror came free with a crack of old caulk. The hidden compartment behind it was deeper than the wall itself, lined with matte black panels, tiny lights winking in the dark like insect eyes. My phone vibrated violently. Stop. Another line followed immediately. We are inside. The hallway light flicked off. I spun, screwdriver raised, darkness pressed in. I could hear the faint shuffle of movement somewhere in the house, slow, deliberate. I backed toward the front door, heart pounding. The deadbolt resisted when I turned it, stiff as stone. I tried again, harder. Nothing. Footsteps, real ones this time, crossed the kitchen tile. I gripped the screwdriver tighter. Who's there? My voice cracked. Silence. The footsteps resumed, closer now, then stopped just outside the hallway. I forced the deadbolt one more time. It snapped open with a metallic pop loud enough to echo. I yanked the door wide and stumbled onto the porch, night air hitting me like a slap. No one followed. I sprinted to a neighbor's house and pounded until lights came on. When they opened the door, I could barely speak. Police arrived within minutes. They found the hollow space behind the mirror stuffed with micro cameras, a signal booster, and a battery pack wired directly into the house's electrical system. Whoever installed it had cut through the studs to create a hidden cavity and sealed it flawlessly. No fingerprints, no footprints. The officers traced the odd notifications to a disposable phone relaying through multiple servers, untraceable. I stayed with friends for weeks, but every time I caught my own reflection, in a window, a dark screen, a harmless bathroom mirror, I felt a twist in my stomach. Because somewhere, someone still has the live feed they stole. And sometimes late at night, my phone lights up for no reason at all. I woke at 2:14 a.m. to a sound that didn't belong. Not a crash, not a thud, a whisper of metal, like someone dragging a coin across a sheet of steel, coming from the ceiling vent above my bed. At first I lay frozen, eyes on the dark grill. My house makes noises, the heater, the pipes. But this was different. It carried a rhythm, a slow, deliberate scrape, pause, scrape again. I held my breath until the sound stopped. Minutes passed. I almost convinced myself it was just the duct expanding with the cool night air. Then a faint clink came from the hallway vent. That wasn't the house. Someone was moving inside the vents. I slid out of bed, bare feet silent on the carpet, and grabbed my phone. No signal, just a spinning circle where the bars should be. Router must have dropped, or someone cut it. I texted my own number as a test. Message failed. The scrape returned, now above the kitchen. I could follow it like a predator's shadow. Whoever it was knew the layout of the ducts, moving with purpose, slowly, almost experimentally, as if mapping where I might be. Questions crowded in. How did they even get in? Were they after something or me? Could they see me right now through a vent I couldn't see? I considered calling 911 on Wi-Fi, but the router lights were dark. Landline? I hadn't had one in years. I crept to the living room and reached for the flashlight in the drawer. The scrape stopped again. Silence. Then a soft hiss of air from the vent above the couch, followed by a low exhale, unmistakably human. I snapped the flashlight on and shone it upward. The grill reflected 2 pinpoints of light, eyes or maybe lenses, then vanished as a hand slid the cover shut from the inside. My stomach turned to ice. I backed toward the front door. Deadbolt engaged, chain latched, exactly as I'd left it. No sign of forced entry. Whoever was up there had to have entered through the roof, maybe through the old attic access I never used. The house felt suddenly alive with tiny creaks, each one a warning. I needed a weapon. Kitchen knives? Too far. Closet bat across the hall, toward the attic hatch. Another metallic clink echoed above me, closer now, as if the intruder was crawling toward the hall. I forced myself forward anyway, snatched the baseball bat from the closet, and looked up at the ceiling panel that led to the attic. The pull string swayed gently. I stepped back, heart pounding. Had it moved because of him, or because I'd imagined it? The string swung again, wider this time, with a soft squeal of wood against wood. A voice, low and almost playful, drifted through the hatch. "Stay right there." My skin went cold. He knew where I stood. I tightened my grip on the bat and whispered to myself, "Don't freeze. Think." The only exit was the front door, but unlocking the chain would take seconds I might not have. The back door opened to a fenced yard but led past the kitchen, beneath the vent where I'd heard the breathing. I chose the back. Moving as quietly as I could, I crept down the hall. Above me, the sound of crawling followed, matching my pace. When I stopped, it stopped. Halfway to the kitchen, a sudden crash exploded behind me, the attic hatch slamming open. I sprinted. The kitchen vent rattled violently. I ducked under it and grabbed the back door knob. Locked, of course. My fingers fumbled the key, while the vent above me shrieked with metal on metal as the cover was unscrewed from the inside. I twisted the key. It jammed. A whisper floated down, "You can't hide down there forever." I slammed my shoulder against the door. It flew open and I stumbled into the night air, bat raised. I didn't stop until I reached the neighbor's porch and pounded hard enough to bruise. Police found the attic access forced from the outside. The ducts were wide enough for a lean adult to crawl through, and they discovered scuff marks where someone had moved along the vents. Whoever it was had cut the power to my router and jammed the cellular repeater in the street junction box. No fingerprints, no footprints on the roof. For weeks I couldn't sleep without staring at every vent in every room, waiting for the soft scrape of metal. Sometimes, even now, when the heater kicks on and the ducts expand, I swear I hear that slow, deliberate crawl returning.